Good evening, Airbnb family. So this one might be a little bit longer of a live stream, but I think it's one that a lot of you want to talk about. A ton of you want to talk about it. So let me paint the scenario for you here. You are talking to an apartment complex. You're like, let me run my short-term rental business, please. And they're like, no. And the reason why they say no is because they want more control over who's going to be staying there. The big objection for apartment complexes is that every tenant in a building has to have a background check, right? And they get approved to stay there, and that's typically how regular residential lease goes. And with corporate housing companies, what they'll do is they'll have a customer already, and if that customer gets approved, they'll put that person there and then rent a bunch of furniture for 4 months. So even with normal business leases that apartment complex is used to, everybody that lives there just has a background check, and then there's one tenant that lives out the lease. So our method of short-term rent is a little funky, isn't it? We're asking the building to allow us to sign a long lease and shove whoever we essentially want in there, and without consequence and without control. So what do, right, to get the yes? You then agree and say, okay, cool, here's what we'll do. Everybody who we approve to stay at your property will have to fill out a background check and be approved for like a criminal background screening. And then once they're approved, they can stay at your place. How about that? And truth be told, this is like 3 properties of ours. So in Houston and Dallas, we have 3 separate apartment complexes. We have 3 separate apartment complexes where we have an agreement with the building that we fill out background checks for all of our guests. And once they're screened and approved, they can stay there. Now, what's that process look like? This is the main question that a lot of you are asking, is like, how can we pull this off? Doesn't this get expensive? And how do we do this in such a short turnaround? And Airbnb won't even allow that, right? You can't force people to do background checks. There's a lot to this. So first, let's talk about how we make this not expensive. We try to get the apartment complex to agree to do the background screenings themselves, right? And a lot of buildings, like big apartment complexes, they have this like bundle package with Yardi or OneSite or Yardi Pro or RealPage, and they can just do an unlimited number of background checks on people. So all of our buildings that we do this with, they do not charge us for the background checks. Ding, right? Do that. And that's the best case scenario. So then how do we do this under a short turnaround time? That's the next thing. So we use a app or a software. It's called Sign Now, SIGNNOW. It's kind of like DocuSign. But what Sign Now essentially does is it allows you to make a document. And that document is like a background check document. Basically, you take the application for a building, you put it on electronic document, and then you have them, the prospective Airbnb guest, you'll have them fill out only a few sections of it that are pertinent to the criminal background screening, and then you won't have them fill out anything that has to do with the financial screening. So imagine taking the electronic application, putting it on Sign Now, making it a template, which that's an option on Sign Now. We won't go into depth about how to use Sign Now in this live video because I can't screencast. But you'll make a template and then you'll save it as a template message on Airbnb. And we all know how to do that, right? Where if you go to the message thread, there's a section where you can make like pre-cut messages. Well, what you do is you have a message with the link to the background check form. And after somebody books, you'll say, hey, thank you so much for booking. Like we said in the house rules, there's a background check for this building. Here's the link, right? So fill this out, please. And what this allows you to do is within seconds, somebody books, they get the background check form, they can fill out the background check form, and when they complete it, Sign Now gives you a filled out copy of that electronic form that you can then email to the building. And that's our workflow. And it's super, it's the fastest way to do it. And it's not necessarily easy and it's not necessarily fast because sometimes guests don't get to it right away, or a lot of times they don't read the house rules. So let's talk about that part, because that's the other part of this, is you have to pretty much redo your Airbnb listing in order to not get in trouble doing this. So what do you need to have on your Airbnb listing to require a background check? You will need to, in the house rules, which it has to be read by a guest before they book, state that this building requires a criminal background check in order for you to stay at this property like any other tenant of the building typically would. That background check will include you're required to give us these pieces of information. So you have to itemize what information they have to give. Driver's license, social security number, like current address, phone number. You have to say exactly what information you need. You can't just say, we require a background check, and then you fill out a background check form. That's not good enough. You have to itemize those items in the house, like in the house rules. And then if somebody books, and then they don't want to fill out the background check form and they cancel, you won't get penalized. And because here's the thing, is somebody cancels like, I don't want to fill out the background check. If you don't do it right, then Airbnb will tag you, block your listing for those dates, charge you $100 because you did it wrong. As long as you itemize what you're required to collect in the house rules, then you're not going to be penalized. But the only downside to this is even if you do it 100% right, Airbnb will still let anybody out of their reservation with a full refund. Even if your cancellation policy is strict or moderate, Airbnb is not required to uphold your background check policy. So that is the downside of being required to do a screening. And if you have a cost for your background checks, my advice to you guys, if there's some of you on this channel who currently are paying per head on background checks, I modify my pricing strategies to get longer term bookings, and I think that's one thing that you guys should really consider is don't require a 2-day or 3-day stay. I'm not saying change your nightly minimums, but really incentivize longer stays because your cost per day, right? This is the number I would look at. What is my cost per day to do background checks? So if I have a guest staying for 3 months, if my background check is $30 that I have to pay, my cost per day is 30 cents a day. Makes sense? So let's recap. You can do criminal background screenings in agreement with an apartment complex for them to agree to let you run your short-term rental business. We do this at 3 properties. You can get it done for free if you get the apartment complex to do the screenings instead of you. To do this fast, you take their application, you make an electronic document on Sign Now, you have it templated out so it can be sent to the guest and then sent to the building, and then you have to update your house rules to itemize what that background check requires and basically state that we have to require every tenant, every occupant to fill out this document. That allows you not to get in trouble if somebody wants to cancel, but you still now no longer, in those instances, are able to collect your payment if somebody cancels. So if somebody cancels because they just change their mind and don't decide to stay, you still get your money. But if somebody tells Airbnb, I'm not comfortable doing a background check, then you lose your money. Make sense? So I want to open this up to anybody who's watching that has any questions, because this is a fun one. So any of you right now, I've seen you guys been texting a little bit, but I've been talking at you, so I haven't been able to watch. Any questions about background checks, about doing it in apartment complexes? Oh, by the way, like the video while we're waiting for everybody to text. Like this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is a perfect opportunity to subscribe. And I think actually looks like none of you have any questions. So with that said, thank you for watching Airbnb Automated. I hope that this live stream was helpful for you guys, and we'll be doing more of these because obviously you all need to know how to run your Airbnb business, don't you? That's why I'm here. I'm here to help. So thanks for watching Airbnb Automated, and I'll see you on the other side.